We have some very special guests put together a panel today to talk about a very important topic that's relevant. So with me, we'll start actually above ladies first. We've got Marci Rosenberg. Thanks for joining.
Happy to be here.
Okay, welcome. We have to my that's my right. Okay, so Alan Henderson, Alan, Executive Director of NATS. Thanks for joining.
Glad to be here.
Okay, awesome. We also have Matt Edwards, Dr. Edwards. Thanks for joining.
Hey, happy to be here.
Okay, great. And we will have Markart Deveaux will be here in a little bit, but we only can fit 4 people in this one, so we're going to start with 4. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today, we're going to talk about COVID-19 or the coronavirus and how that is impacting everyone. These changes are kind of seemingly happening to all of us pretty quickly in the last couple weeks. So we wanted to put together this panel here today and just kind of talk about it and changes and what's going on. So why don't we start with you, Marci, a little bit, if you want to, give us kind of the medical doctor's perspective of what's going on and fill us in on some information.
Sure. Well, based on the questions that I think you've been getting from people, which were great questions. The first one was, can you talk about how contagious it is on a one-to-one lesson basis? And do teachers really need to be worried about students who come in coughing and sniffling and things that we often see in our studios and in our clinics? So first, let's just talk about how is this transmitted. And you can get a lot of good information on the CDC.gov. Center for Disease Control. They have a whole page there that they do keep updated regularly. I will throw out there that there are a lot of things floating around on Facebook, apparent messages from physicians who are infectious disease control people and advice, and just know that a lot of that is sort of speculation. It is not necessarily medically vetted information, and even though some of that information may not necessarily be harmful, it's also not necessarily accurate. So I just do want to throw that out there. Go to the websites where you're likely to get vetted and up-to-date information, and the CDC.gov is one of those websites. So first off, how is this transmitted? How are we getting this disease? Well, it is close contact. And close contact in larger groups tends to be one of the predominant types of things. And then through respiratory droplets. So in other words, if I'm sitting with Alan across a table and I sneeze, Alan is going to get some sort of level of those droplets potentially on him or near him or on a surface in front of him that he will then touch. Or if I wipe my nose and Alan also then hands me his cell phone to show me a text and I look at it and hand it back to him and then he touches his nose, it's those types of situations. So I think one of the reasons why people are getting why we're having such a response that we're having is because this is being classified as a new virus. So compared to influenza, which are known viruses where we tend to have a herd immunity sort of developed to a certain extent to the numerous different kinds of influenza viruses. I think one of the thoughts and some of the reading I've done is that because this is relatively new, we don't have as much of that sort of herd immunity. And so it's spreading quickly. And because you can have symptoms that appear anywhere from a couple of days to even a little over a week, while I think the current thought is that you are most contagious when you appear symptomatic, I do think that is a thought that you can also be contagious when you're not symptomatic. And so that I think is why this is sort of scary and why it's spreading so quickly. So
one second, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but on the concept of symptoms and not showing symptoms, I don't know if my camera froze or not, but I guess what I've read is that sometimes it takes 5 days, to maybe show symptoms, and then I've seen on the other side of the spectrum, it's as long as 24 days.
Right, and according to the CDC, the numbers that they write are 2 to 14. But I think the point there is that I don't know that we have enough information about this virus. And again, I'm not a physician or an infectious disease doctor. I'm going by sort of what I know as a healthcare provider, just in general, and then what I've read on the CDC. But I think the reason why the issue of containment is so important, and why someone like me who might be a healthy adult should not necessarily be traveling to areas, and back and forth and all of this kind of stuff, is to try to do what they're referring to as flattening the curve. Have you guys read sort of that concept? And what that refers to is, it refers to the idea of when we do containment, we sort of lower that spike of how many number of cases we might have in a given time. So if you think about what the medical care facilities can handle, there's a certain level of tolerance that they have, and we want to keep the case numbers below what we as medical care providers, when we talk about ICUs and the ability to really care for and contain these patients, we want to keep the cases below the capacity. So containment helps to flatten that curve. We might have the same amount of cases, but it's over a longer period of time. So we don't get that huge spike where the need for care is greater than the capacity for the medical care providers and the physicians to care for them. So I do think that that's why we've had such a knee-jerk reaction to people closing in large universities, is to try to prevent that kind of a situation from happening. And there are enough unknowns that I don't think it's unreasonable to consider these measures, like converting to online teaching and online studios, which is why what you guys are doing tonight is so important. I will say, to the actual question, should I be teaching a student who's coughing? I would say probably not one-on-one right now. There's no reason to. It's not as important as our voice training is, it's not an essential activity that has health implications. So I think that if you have a student who's coughing or has any of these symptoms, and just to review, some of the primary symptoms are fever, cough, shortness of breath, and others too. And it's similar to flu-like symptoms in a lot of ways. So I think people become confused about how to differentiate them, but I don't know that we should worry about differentiating them. I think we should just adhere to these containment recommendations and these recommendations. And just, if you are sick or you think you're sick, you need to stay home, and then call your care provider and then be seen. So if you are, one of the questions was, should a teacher wear a mask? Right. So we've all heard about these N95 masks that are flying off the shelves and nobody can get them. And they've disappeared because people are hoarding them. So I happen to have a couple of these because I actually use these when I do resin for art pieces. So I actually happen to have a couple of them. This is what an N95 mask looks like. Okay. And one of the questions was, should I, as a teacher, would it be appropriate to wear this mask? Would it be weird? So let me talk to you about what the CDC recommendations are. So first of all, people should not be using or wearing these masks if they don't need to have these masks. There are too many people who do need to have access to these masks that we should not be using them. So these are the recommendations. So first of all, let me put this on so you can actually have an understanding of what this actually would be like if you actually tried to wear. I mean, if you could envision doing a lesson with one of these masks on, and it's not so easy to breathe with this mask on. But you shouldn't be wearing a mask like this unless you are you're sick and you are traveling to your care provider to get looked at, or you are traveling somewhere medical. Then you should have this on.
So if I may keep it light and just add some humor, that's not a mask you want to use for semi-occluded vocal tract exercises.
No, exactly. And you don't get a whole lot of occlusion with this, actually. So if you are ill with flu-like symptoms and have fever and you need to be traveling, or you are living with somebody else, then you need to be wearing this mask. If you as the patient cannot breathe because of this mask, because you have other respiratory issues, then the person who lives with you might need to be wearing this mask in order to protect them if they're going to be around somebody who is sick. So that's when these masks are necessary, or for a healthcare professional who's going to be seeing lots of patients throughout the day. So the answer is no. Teachers should not be wearing these kinds of masks. The little surgical masks do a little bit to sort of minimize the droplets if they cough, but they really potentially give a false sense of security, that you're a little more protected than you think you might be. What teachers should be doing is sanitizing their in-home studios. If they are going to be seeing patients, you should be definitely wiping down the frequently touched surfaces, your doorknobs, your piano keyboard, your mouse on your computer, your cell phone. It's very, 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 very dirty. What else? Obviously, the piano keyboards, microphones, any of those kinds of surfaces, doorknobs should be wiped down. What should be wiped them down with? A bleach solution. Or alcohol that's greater than 70%. Now, here's an interesting thing I learned about bleach that I did not know. Bleach has a shelf life. So if you have bleach that's been sitting for more than a few months, up to 6 months, it starts losing its strength. So when you're diluting it, and I've read anywhere from 1/3 of a cup to a gallon to 1/2 a cup to a gallon, and 4 teaspoons to a quart, it starts to lose its strength more quickly. So I would say mix it in much smaller amounts and remix it every few days if you really are going to be regularly kind of wiping down your studios and your surfaces.
So there's a lot to keep up with. I think one thing is worth pointing out is that those alcohol sanitizing gels and even the wipes are perfectly fine around a microphone. One of my students was surprised when I did that the other day, and I just showed them that the metal screen that goes over top of the microphone usually has a layer of foam inside of it. And so you're not getting anything anywhere near the electronic components of that microphone. If you have some high-end recording studio microphone, then by all means, don't use it, right now, because we don't want to mess that up. But your standard handheld microphone is different. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for bearing with my lateness. It's been a busy day, hasn't it?
It has. But so, Marci, one of the questions that came in while you were going through all that, Annie Little asked, so is it time to switch to online for the time being? And I think that, our universities have decided that. I know we have decided that, my wife and I, for our home studio as well, because we have young kids in the house and whatnot. I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Do you think, and for a general teacher, if you're in a state where there are reported cases, is it time? And if you're in a state where there are not reported cases, is it time?
Right. So that's a great question. I definitely think if you're in a state, and that website, the cdc.gov website, also, if you scroll, you just sort of look around, but there's a map that shows the states and level of effectiveness in those states. And the most populated states with cases right now are New York, California, and Washington State. And those are like the dark red and dark brown states. And then the orange states, Florida's orange, because it has around, between 50 and 100 or something like that. And so if you're in one of those high concentration states or high concentration areas, I would say absolutely convert to online. I think if you're in one of those areas where there's nothing, there are two thought processes. Let's try to keep it that way and convert to online. Or, my area is not impacted at the moment. I'm going to have strict protocols about health and who should be coming and who shouldn't, and disinfectant protocols, and I'm going to take it one day at a time. I don't think that that's unreasonable if you're in one of those areas that's not so heavily impacted.
And I would add that also where I am in Georgia and Florida, the impact has not been as serious as so many other places in the country. And so I think there is, frankly, a lot of opportunity for independent teachers who can communicate the care that they're taking in sanitation in their studios and everything, and with a lot of schools closing and things like that, it'll only take a couple of days before parents are ready to find something valuable for their kids to do. And it might be a voice lesson would be a great thing for them to do right now. And if you are someone, who is taking these precautions and you're not in a high risk area, this might be a real part. And maybe in 4 or 5 days, the parents themselves will want to come for a lesson because they want to get away from the kids at home. But, you have to kind of also think about, obviously it's a serious situation, but we also want to, serve people in the best way we can, whether it's independent studios or in an academic environment as well.
And I think it's one of the important things in any kind of, natural disaster that happens or any emergency like this. They often talk about trying to maintain as much normalcy as possible. And so I think that, what we've been talking about at Shenandoah is maintaining the schedule so that everything is still the way that it would have been, just in a different setting. So that way our students feel like they're still living their normal life and that they haven't had their life completely upended. And I think, with high schools, that's going to be harder to do. So the private voice teacher can actually serve a really great function in that moment of helping, the homebound students feel like they still are a part of something,
right?
Which could be great. A couple things, and then because I know we have a lot of people that really want to get into some of the how-to messaging and other stuff. One last, public health question. Shannon Coates said, is it a good policy to follow the school closure? So, for example, if the public schools are closed, is that a good sign that you should convert to online? And I mean, my guess would be it's a pretty significant sign, because any of these schools that are shutting down, there's a massive economic cost. I know at Shenandoah that they were talking about the fact of, depending on how long students are out of dorms, that starts to get expensive real fast. And so, and then it's expensive to get the technology to keep up and all these other things. So, yeah, I mean, if a school district, to me, is looking at the overwhelming cost that they're going to incur, or a university system, and says, you know what, it's worth the cost, it's probably a worthwhile sign to follow.
Yeah, potentially. Although, Michigan, we have documented 2 cases.
Yeah.
And Ann Arbor Public Schools just closed a half hour ago. So, but I also think with the influx of 40,000 students just traveling back from spring break is a very high risk that that's going to increase over the next couple of weeks. But I think I agree with Alan also. You use your best judgment based on your setting, and you implement protocols that are maybe a little beyond what you might typically do. Have students remove their shoes maybe just so they're not tracking who knows what in. Everybody washes their hand at the bathroom that's right at the front door. They wash their hands before they leave, if you're deciding to move forward with lessons. But if you can easily convert with the information you guys are going to give them to online, it's very reasonable to do that. Makes a lot of sense.
So let's get into that discussion a little bit, because there has been debate going on online for years now about to online or not to online. I mean, 10 years. I remember being 10 years ago at a conference about it. And I've seen some people making comments about, I just don't believe in that. And I can understand that when we're not in a time of crisis, but now we're in a time of crisis. And so some other people have been contributing to those conversations and said, well, I believe in putting food on my table, or I believe in paying my bills. And I think that's there. So I think there's a lot of myths that we can dispel here, that there's this myth that online lessons aren't productive. And I think that, we could talk about that a little bit, because I have found them very productive, depending on how you adjust them. I think the biggest thing to get people started, since there's a lot of viewers who have never taught online lessons before, is just giving you a simple game plan. And I know Mike has put together a special website where you can leave your email address and name, and we're going to be gathering resources and blasting them out to people to make sure that you have plenty of free resources to consult as you start to figure this out, because it matters. But, one of the things, too, that kind of goes with this conversation that we just had with Alan about, trying to keep some normalcy in these kids' lives, all of us are going to benefit in these first 3 to 4 weeks of getting into online teaching, especially those people who are new to it, and the novelty effect. And the novelty effect is this is brand new. And so your students are going to be sitting there adjusting to, oh, I'm singing to a computer. Oh, what's this like? And it's going to be kind of fun because it's different. So I think that as far as making this transition, we can make this a positive experience of helping students learn about this new world of online education, because unfortunately with the global economy, this probably isn't going to be the first time this happens in our lifetimes. So I would just be curious. I know Marci has to leave at some point here this evening, but Marci, what are your thoughts? And then we'll go to Michelle and Alan on the effectiveness of Skype lessons. And we can kind of combine this, because one of the people, the questions I see is, well, if they're not that effective, how can I charge the same price? And so I think those two questions that have been coming in, we can definitely bundle together and address together. So I see a big smile on Michelle's face. I think we're on the same page on that. But Marci, you want to kind of kick us off?
But that's actually, it's a great question for somebody like me, who's a very, very manual, I'm a manual intervention kind of a practitioner, whether it's in my clinical setting or if I'm sort of working. But I've also learned, and I've been doing Zoom, for years and years, whether it's at a PAVA meeting or if I'm doing a consultation with somebody, and you just adjust to it and you learn. It actually makes you, you have to become even more creative with maybe some of the things that you typically do that you don't have access to. So I actually think that you can make it work, and there are pros to doing it online. So I'm glad that I was forced into it. And that I've gotten used to doing it to a certain degree. And maybe a lot of other people, as a result of this experience, will join into the group of hundreds of teachers who already have started doing that.
Yeah. Good. Michelle.
I have so many opinions. So which question are we talking about?
So we're talking about this idea that, our voice lessons online, can they be as effective? And because that then goes into many of the voice teachers' concerns, which is, well, if they're not effective, how do I charge my same rate? Yeah. And how do I deal with that?
So first of all, if you're brand new to online teaching, it will not be as effective because you don't know what you're doing. But you are still creating an environment. You are still offering your expertise, and you are still training the person on the other side how to do a new skill and a new thing. And that does not devalue your time or your expertise. So I would highly caution about offering discounts to your students for online, because you will be so sad at yourself that you did that, because you're going to get up to speed very, very quickly and be like, oh, I've got this. This is amazing. I just had to adjust XYZ. Now I'm good. And now you've got to go back and raise the rate again, when you are the one who told the student it wasn't valuable. And I don't think that is wise for the pocketbook. And I don't think it's wise for what we're communicating to our students about the value of the expertise. I do believe that online lessons are extremely effective. And as Marci was just saying, I feel like I've become a way better teacher from teaching online. And it's taught me how to look at a body in a totally different way. It's taught me how to sense a body in their own space when they're comfortable in a totally different way. It's taught me to listen in a different way. And it invites me to give the student even more autonomy, because now I get to teach them how to pay attention to themselves. I get to teach them self-awareness and proprioception and all of these things that isn't our goal to work ourselves out of a job. Aren't we just trying to make damn good singers? Sorry, that's Laura thing. But I feel like it can equip singers so fabulously. Now, that being said,
I think you just hit on something, though, too, is that it forces autonomy. It forces, because one of the big things that you mentioned is it makes you listen different. It makes you listen different because you can't play the exercise along with them. So you play the pattern, then you play a starting pitch, which makes they can't go on autopilot. Because, we all know you're warming that student up and they're like, oh, I've done this before. And they'll go on to autopilot. But when you're not playing there and you can listen to every little fault, all of a sudden that puts them in a different state of awareness, and then us as the teacher.
It's also good for motor learning.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. 100%. I love that. And one thing I really love about the online lesson experience for the student is I got to tell you, there is something so powerful about being in your own space. There is a level of like that weird nervousness that sometimes happens when a student comes into our space. I mean, sometimes they're a little too casual, like put on some pants, but I literally had a teacher tell me that someone showed up to our online lesson with no pants. So wear pants, but the reality is like you when they are physically comfortable and they feel grounded in their space, they are going to bring to their voice something that they will not bring in a space that is not their own. Now, obviously they're going to have to sing in spaces that aren't their own when they are, performing. But just getting to the nitty gritty right away I love it. I love
That's
awesome.
Awesome.
Telling them to grab stuff and be like, hey, I see that in the back over there. Why don't you grab that? We're going to stretch on that instead of using my fancy TheraBands or this or that. It's like, you got a hair tie in? Oh, are you in your bedroom? Do you have some hair ties? Great. Let's use hair ties for vocal folds. Just all those kinds of things. And now every time they look at their vanity, if it's like a teenage young woman that I was working with, every time she looks at her vanity, she's like, I have my vocal folds right here, so she's integrating the information into her space, which is
cool.
making her a singer.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I also think, I think a lot of people are a little bit phobic right now, but there's hardly anyone who hasn't had a FaceTime conversation, who hasn't been on a Skype meeting for some other purpose, or Zoom, whatever your favorite application is. So, to suddenly be phobic about the fact that you're going to do something else with your expertise on the same platform you've been having conversations with your mother, father, grandmother, sister, brother, child, give yourself a break there and just be a little comfortable, take a deep breath, relax. And I think one of the things I've been telling a lot of people is, don't suddenly start searching for all the best practices for teaching online. We're not in that, if best practices are for like when you have months to plan a great online learning experience. And that's not where we are. We're doing triage for our colleagues, for our students, for ourselves in this situation, and as a result, wasting our time on all the best practices models and trying to get up to speed on all that is just going to frustrate ourselves. And many of our students know less about technology than we think they do.
Less or more?
Less. Relative to online learning, they know less than some of us do in many cases.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like in general, I was like, I do all my students to help me with the things.
Right. But, so I think don't psych yourself out about it. And I think that's also what Michelle's
100%.
So,
you're awesome. Be awesome. Just be awesome online instead of in your studio.
So, and I think, so this is goes into a question that Rose just asked, is if we can talk about how to do this. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that we covered is how to do this if you've never done it before, period, because it goes completely in line with what Alan just said, which is, we don't have to go for best practices the next week. So you can do an online lesson with any laptop, desktop computer, or a tablet. I mean, you could technically do it on your phone. I've done it in a bind. It's, you're looking at a smaller thing. But one of the things that people are worried about is the microphones. And, I always say to teachers, give yourself credit. You're a voice teacher. You've been doing this forever. And yes, you're not going to get the student's authentic voice, but you've been listening to voices for thousands and thousands of hours. You're going to notice what's a little off, right? So microphones might make things a little tinnier, and the student might overdrive it a little bit. There's some easy things that we can do for both of those. So the simplest thing is headphones. Now you're going to see some people are going to say use headphones, others say don't. So there's pluses and minuses. The pluses with the headphones is it's going to get you a better, more balanced sound than what you're going to get just off of your laptop speaker. And it's going to help prevent some of that feedback loop. So you're not ending up having the student hear an echo. You know, if you have a separate microphone like this that you can set in front of you and then have speakers off in the back, then you can use, you know, a separate mic and speakers in your studio as well. But let's just start there. Thoughts on, you know, optimizing that just most core basic setup that everybody has.
Yes, I have thoughts.
Okay, go for it.
So pick your platform, then pick a way to share documentation, and then pick a way to talk about it. So only those three things to start out. So your platform, what platform you're going to use to actually deliver the content. Then some sort of document sharing, whether it's like Google Docs or it's Dropbox or it's both or whatever. And then some way to talk about it so that you're either in, maybe you set up a little cheapo, you know, free Slack workspace. Maybe you get a text thread going. Maybe you do that somewhere else. And then for platforms, this one's tricky because depending on your cell service and depending on your internet connection, like everyone says, oh, I like Zoom best. I like voice lessons best. I like Skype best. I like, I don't know, GoToMeeting best, whatever. All that will change depending on how well your internet is, right? So some platforms are going to work really, really well for you. Some won't. I think Mike should talk about some of the technical aspects of the different platforms because that matters. But just pick your platform, pick how you're going to share docs, pick how you're going to communicate. And that's it. And then just like do a thing.
I think it's great. It's like a simple entry. So when you're talking about sharing docs, are you talking, what are you talking about sharing?
So I'm talking about sharing your sheet music. Like if you've purchased your sheet music, you know,
legal, remember.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is when I mean, y'all, if you haven't paid the extra 10 or 15 bucks a year to like upgrade music notes to let you make PDFs, do that thing. Do the thing, right? Just well worth it. So after you've downloaded it, if you have Dropbox or something, or you have a Google Drive that you can say, here's your music, right? And then the student can download it from there, you know, or you just make your students buy it. I don't know how your model is, you know, you can just make them buy it, teach them how to buy it, make a Loom video and be like, you are now in charge of buying your own music, right? Loom is a screen recording video software that you can use to show people things. But was that like Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, just sharing stuff? You can share PDFs of your exercises. If you take notes, you can do it in Google Docs so that everyone has the notes there. Your practice protocols, like whatever their homework is, or if you're someone who does practice protocols and that kind of stuff. Is that what you meant, or did I not answer the question properly?
Yeah, that. Just giving an idea of what we mean, because I think that that's the one thing that, you know, people are confused. So Christina Howe said sharing PDFs electronically, is that legal? We're not copyright experts here. It's, you know, it's.
If you've purchased it, pay your money.
Yep.
Pay these people, buy your things, right? Because here's the deal. Music notes and all of that, they know that if you're buying a piece of music, because I mean, the thing is for teachers, they know that you're going to have one copy for you and one copy for your student. They know that. It's already built into all that shenanigans and legalese.
Yeah.
Don't now stay away from the Scribd, you know, personal upload area. Don't be using Scribd and all of that, because that's.
Scribd does have a license with Hal Leonard if you use the sheet music tab.
If you use the sheet music tab, but you know how people go, oh, but it's free over here in this area.
Yes. Yep. But good. Hey, I know too, real quick, because I want to keep going on this because this is good information. But I know Marci's got to depart with us.
I'm sorry, Marci.
She said earlier she found out her daughter's school just is closing down after tomorrow. So,
We have
Marci, thank you for taking the time to join us. and your chaotic evening to come on here
Yes.
and kind of shed some, insight on what this is really starting to look like.
Thank you guys for doing this. This is important information. So
yes.
Right.
Any parting thoughts on your end?
I would say with the online stuff, if you've never done it and you're really feeling intimidated by it, do a dress rehearsal with somebody. Do a practice voice lesson, either with a well-established student whose voice you're very familiar with, who you know well. Say, hey, can we do a little? That way you can get the sound stuff sorted out, work out all those kinks in a dress rehearsal. We're performers. We're used to dress rehearsals. It'll make you feel more comfortable when you do an actual real lesson. That would be so.
Yeah, that's a great point. With our service of voice lessons, we do include the fact that we want a teacher to get that comfort level and do a dress rehearsal. So highly recommend it.
Wash your hands and stay healthy, everybody.
Yes.
Love you.
Bye.
Christina, I know that you're. Can I just say something to Christina in the thread because she's worried about the PDFs. So if here's something. Yes. In fact, Christina, I did a live this morning on my personal page on how students can prepare, just like a quick little thing. But if you're really worried about the music and the PDFs, just buy 2 copies. Have your student buy the copy and say, we're going to pause the way it is. Make sure they buy, make sure you buy. And that will take care of that. If that's something that you're really concerned about, totally doable to bypass that worry.
I think the tricky thing with all of this is fair use. And that's the fair use doctrine that is used in court so often. If you start reading into it, isn't actually even a thing completely. It's like based off of past court cases, and it's always up in the air. So I think what you're saying is buy it is the safe option. If you're working with classical music, you're lucky because you don't have to deal with this because there's so much of it's public domain and it's available on IMSLP unless you're using contemporary stuff. So I think that everybody's got to figure out what they can do. I think it's safe to say that in this first week of figuring it out, you're not going to have Hal Leonard showing up at your door with a SWAT team if you, think that you're using a PDF to try to teach a song. So I think that, yes, try to figure it out.
It's not legal advice.
It's not legal advice. No, it's not legal advice. But I mean, just to me, it's there. When you look at the fair use law, it allows you to use things to teach, especially if it's destroyed after the fact. And that's debatable because that's
very debatable.
That's right. But that's what I mean is it's just, there's lots of issues with it. So I think that it's kind of that point that, have your students purchase the music for sure and, go from there with what you feel comfortable with.
Sure. I'll just chime in on this one. We actually have built an integration with NoteFlight, which is an online music score system. So, if you do use voice lessons, which, we'll love, I'm not going to go a lot in tech on that, but we do have an integration with that. Hal Leonard did wind up buying NoteFlight years ago, and they've now created a marketplace too. So you can actually go score your own music, put it up on the marketplace, and then link to that inside of the voice lessons app. So that's a pretty cool thing too. If you're a teacher and you want to start making your own courses or making lessons and sharing that stuff, it's definitely an option too. And we're trying to play well with that community.
Yeah, good. So let's talk then real quick about, because I have ideas like of how I tend to like to structure one of these online lessons. But I think because it gets into this sharing thing that Michelle was just talking about, I think we should start to kind of just lay this ground base work. And for me, the ground base work is, of course, we can have our chit chat at the beginning. But then you can go through your exercises pretty much the way that you normally do. Now, again, you're going to have to play kind of whatever pattern you're going to have them do and demonstrate it on your end first. And there's always going to be somewhat of a millisecond delay. And I know we'll give Mike time to talk about how, he's fixed that on the voice lessons platform, but we're also trying to make this just available to anybody tonight, no matter what your platform is. Because that, I think, is, Mike would agree with me, it's the biggest number one thing is like, let's help everybody start to get started with this path. That's what's most important. So if you go with doing it on your own and playing the exercise the typical way, you are going to have, what is it, a 1 second delay, Mike, or how many milliseconds is it?
It varies. Again, it varies on platform. It varies on the proximity of the student and the teacher, because a lot of them, like Skype and Zoom and FaceTime, are point-to-point technologies. And so you're going to see anywhere between 100 milliseconds one direction to, let's say 400 milliseconds, one direction, right? Plus, then you got our human reaction time. And just a fun fact, our brains are able to sense a lag or a delay at 20 milliseconds. It's a 50th of a second. We can tell there's been a delay, right? So you're already saying just the time it takes a single piece of data to go from Los Angeles to New York on average is 50 milliseconds. So you're already going to have some delay because the Earth is not flat, people. We learned that a long time ago. And so even though we've got light, it's going to curve and it takes time for this data to move. So I'll explain more about how kind of we solve that or give you tools to go around that. But, the point is there's going to be some delay. So it's really how you work with it is kind of how I like to explain to people. You don't want to fight it. You want to figure out how you can embrace that. And this is a different medium. This is not, some of the training that I, went to an instructor, right? And teach myself. They come to you. They're in the same space. You don't really have any of that delay, so you can react immediately. You've got to kind of just embrace the fact that it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
That can make you, I think, as Michelle said, we've had some comments, make you a better teacher for when you do offline lessons as well. So,
well,
call and response is your friend.
Yeah, because what I'm going to say is because then when it comes next is after you've introduced that pattern and then they sing the pattern, you have to start working out your own timing with each individual student of when to hit the next note. So if they're playing in a C major 5-note scale, I'm listening, and when they're about to sing that C, I can usually hit that C sharp and get it to time in right at about the same time on their end so I can keep them moving. Right? Now, we also have to remember that sometimes we freak out about that. But if Marci was still here, she would tell you that the motor learning research tells us that giving them that slight couple 2 to 3 second pause in between repetitions is actually really good for the learning process. I see Michelle shaking her head. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, with my littles, I have a littles, and what I have them do is I have them give me thumbs up when they're done. So they'll do sing the pentatonic scale, and then I hit the next thing. And it's a way to not only get them to have the motor learning connection happen, but it's also a way for them to say, okay, I'm done, release the breath. We have a little protocol around it. And then it also gets them moving. So now they're not all in the middle there too. So you can even, if you're working with younger students, put some play-based movement in there.
Yeah.
I think also you have to be ready to adjust, because we've just talked about how speeds can change, from one session to another. Your speed can change based on traffic and, all kinds of things around you or on the other end with your students. So you just have to be, it'll take you a minute or two at the beginning of every lesson to kind of get in the groove of what that timing is. You're not going to be able to rely on the same timing every single lesson.
Which is also, honestly, though, this is where, like Michelle said, it makes you a better teacher. I think that's one of the great things. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I have days where the faculty emails do not stop and the students of concern do not stop and the signing and knocking on my door. And I do sometimes have a student walk in and I'm like, okay, let's warm up. And my brain is going, oh my God, how am I surviving today? Right? Whereas when you're in that online format, that's not an option. Right. So it does really teach you to slow down. And Claudia Friedlander just chimed in. She said, yes, anything that will get everyone to slow down a bit will help with coordination and retention. And so that's, again, this goes back to the conversation that when we first brought Michelle in earlier here tonight was, it's not a less than. In a lot of ways, it can be a better than, because it forces you to actually use some of these things we know about motor learning that sometimes, the hype of being in the room with a young extroverted student will start to speed up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, Matt. I want to add, because I think you were pointing out, like, you can with our technology. And so whether you're using voice lessons or not, if you're not using us, check out the webinar. You can go through that. I'll give you a link to if you want to see a demo of the platform. But to talk about, if you don't use us, then you definitely can play, the scale and kind of do the call response, right? And work out a protocol. It's an easy way that you can be teaching a lesson in an hour from now on Skype or Zoom or any of the platforms. Another common thing, because I did a lot of customer discovery to talk to voice teachers, just to remove my own biasness in building the platform. I did over 300 interviews with voice teachers. How do they do it? And so one of the other common ways is teachers will pre-record exercises and scales, and that'll work too. That's definitely something. If you've got MP3 tracks, you got your WAV files, you can send the student ahead of time, give them the Dropbox link, they can play it. There's some downsides with that because they might not start in the right key, right? And so then you're waiting 10 seconds for them to go from the key of C to the key of D and do the modulations, right? So that's out there too. Now, briefly, the way that we handle that, as Matt was saying, is you play in the scale, and then we let you play the chord length that you want to give of the, let's call it the breath, right, in between each repetition. So we kind of embrace that technology to create the repetitive pattern so you can have the motor skill learning. And we put that control in the hands of the teachers to do that. So you're creating dynamic exercises as you need to for each student in the right key, starting and stopping in different keys as you need to. So, sorry guys.
What's great with the technology is that with that system, you press the note and it plays it in real time on their end. So you're always playing the exercises and they're singing them in real time, which really makes a world of difference. And you can pause, talk to them, and then restart up, which is great. And if you're somebody that, which I think this goes to answering Dan's question, if you're somebody that is working with more advanced students that need more complex patterns, exercise patterns, that's where the voicelessons.com platform really comes in handy, or going on the MP3 route and uploading those, that can work as well. I mean, the thing with the MP3 route is you're fixed to whatever the MP3s you've delivered are, and then versus using a platform where you have that option built in, then you're not limited and you can go up and down as you need. I think Michelle's about ready, and Alan, but I also think one of the things I want to come back to, though, too, is back to the idea of pitch patterns, because Lita Skiers has written in her book about all the things that you can get with just simple patterns. I think that's worth covering for a minute as well. Alan, did you have a thought?
Yeah, I was just going to say, lots of people are looking for hacks right now. So I'm going to throw this one out there, and that is a lot of us have used Accompanist at different times, the app. You can download that app, and all of the exercises they have on Accompanist are free. So they have tons and tons of exercises already recorded, which then you can self-pitch up and down, or your student can. And then you're hearing, if they have the app and you say, go to this exercise, and they start playing it and they're singing it with the accompaniment, then you're getting it all coming back to you as the teacher. And it's a quick thing for you to use right now. It saves you time from creating your own MP3s or trying to get into doing all of that. So it's just something that's there, and I just think it's something you can use.
Yeah, and I think what's good for that is that if you're going to use something like that, is to develop a hand signal system with your clients so that they know if they see you doing this, it's time to hit pause on that exercise thing. Because most of the platforms do not allow you to both talk at the same time. That's one of the things, that Mike's conquered. Like I said, we're not trying to turn this into a sales pitch, but it just happens to be one of those things. You're going to run into some platforms really block that ability. So learning how to use a hand system, it can be super effective. You just got to predetermine what those are. So it might be that to stop, that to let the student know ahead of time that you're about to take them up a half a step. So in case the pitch doesn't go through, they don't hear it. Or before you're about to is pointing down, right? So come up with your own sign language system so that you can work with these, because we're still kind of on the vocal exercises, but I definitely want to come back to that accompanist and talk about how to coach a song, because I think that's the other thing that's tricky. Mm-hmm. Michelle, did you have stuff to add about the exercises and vocalizing?
Oh, I saw someone was like, that doesn't, Carla was saying it doesn't allow for intuitive teaching. And I would invite you to, first of all, know that you don't have to do one or the other. Like, you can do both, right? You can say, okay, these are kind of my canned exercises that I really love to use for some students. And then you can just get on the piano and do whatever. I do that all the time, you know, like I know I'm going to do, like for me, I know I'm going to start with SOVT, glides and slides on some sort of droplet producing situation, right? So I know I'm going to do that, and it's going to be first in pentatonics and then maybe a 9-tone, right? So great, I can, you know, set it up and let it go, and I can be watching and looking at alignment and all of that. But then I'm going to be like, great, what's our rep that we're working on today? And I'm going to make exercises up right there on the spot based on the rep that I'm going to be dealing with. And I can do that too with my piano. I can do that through Zoom. I can do that through Skype with a call and response model. I can do it with voice lessons in terms of just playing it right in and their fancy technology as well. So you can, you know, I feel like you can be intuitive if you don't choose to kind of dial in your exercises early. It's a both and, in my opinion.
Great.
Oh,
so,
everyone was quiet.
Sorry,
I'm touching multiple things here at once. But I wanted to go back to what we were talking about Lita Skierce's book and the Manual of Singing Voice Rehabilitation. Is just to one of the other things I think that so at the CCM Voice Pedagogy Institute, we go over these exercises. And what Lita basically does is says, think about all the things you can accomplish with, and then she gives you simple steps. So think about sustained pitches. Like, you know, in an online environment, you might feel like, oh, I've got to go to my normal fancy 9-tone or my, you know, big fancy whatever. I tried to play something better than that, but it didn't work. But, you know, those big like octave and a fifth patterns. And you don't have to jump right into that. What Lita talks about is like on a sustained pitch, you can really work respiratory control. On a sustained pitch, you can really work registration. You can have them do alternate practice, going back to what Marci talks about with motor learning, where we can start doing the same pitch in chest mode and head mode, giving the student time in between to make those connections and be able to change things up. We can work on just cleaning up vowels. So if you know that the student has a terrible time sustaining a clean eval, as most young men do, because we can't control our tongue tension, you can just use those sustained pitches and just work an eval. And you can get a lot done with just that. She then talks about moving from those to glides, because when we're on sustained pitches, it allows all the intrinsic muscles to balance with the respiratory system. And once you move to glides, then it makes you start having to coordinate a little bit of CT action and what that does with everything else. Then you deal with just that. Then we can start moving towards stepwise motion, because then when you move to stepwise motion, your body has to stop along the way. And again, we have to rebalance parts of the system. And then you can move up to arpeggios, because once you move to arpeggios, now we have those skips. So if you really go back to basics, you can, especially if you're getting into Skype or online teaching at first, you know, and you haven't done it before, maybe even just start there. Don't feel like you have to jump in to those big patterns. Maybe just tell your students, hey, we're going to play around with some basics today, and we're going to do a reboot on your respiratory control using sustained pitches. Then that just gives you time to get comfortable with what the system feels like. And you actually, if you go and read Lita's book, you're accomplishing a whole lot. Mm-hmm. We just have sometimes been trained into our mind that we're not doing enough if we're not doing a fancy 9-tone pattern. But sometimes less is more.
Mezzo de voce for days, right?
Exactly. Mezzo de voce exercises.
Both mezzo de voces. So the dynamic one and then the registration one.
Yes, absolutely.
Everybody should do more mezzo de voce.
And I think also think about how much mental energy you are giving to just trying to play the darn scale on the piano and move up and down, you know, and how much of that is taking away from your concentration on what your student is actually doing.
Yes.
So, you know, there's lots of ways to improve your teaching and improve your ear and, you know, improve the concentration that you're able to give to your student. You know, even though you feel like you're hampered by not having the ability to play right in front of them.
Yeah.
The people are asking about the book, so I'm just holding it up so they can see the title of the book.
Link to that.
Manual of Singing Voice Rehabilitation. And
Elena was asking, I've heard about using 2 devices. So I just wanted to, get real practical because I know we're very good at getting very heady here. So Elena, yes. So what I found in the platforms like Skype, Zoom, FaceTime is do not have the accompaniment playing out of the device that you are on the video platform with. So maybe you have maybe the student, no, this is the other thing is the student should have it on their side. I think we made that clear, but I'm not sure. But the student maybe is playing it. Oh, everyone can see what's going on my phone. The student can be playing it off of their phone, but it's like back here or the speaker is back here so that when they're singing, that noise isn't like canceling out the noise of their voice. If the student is playing the exercises or the accompaniment on the same device that they are Zooming you, it's going to get all funkified. So yes, 2 devices is helpful.
Great. Well, I think that's a great segue to go over and talk about how to work with rep.
One thing before we do that, Matt, I put you on the spot, but can we go through, you mentioned those different exercises. One of the things you can do in the platform is build lesson plans.
Yeah.
So can I connect with you after the show? And just as a gift to the community, if you are thinking you want to try us out, we'll give you a lesson plan you can follow. So you can literally just go with the program. And you don't have to worry about it. We'll give you probably more content than you need, but you'll find something in there that you're familiar with, and then you can go ahead and use that in your program.
Absolutely. And please know, I mean, my whole philosophy for people who are tuning in, if they don't know me, is that there are lots of ways to crack an egg. And what matters is that you figure out what works best for your clientele with their learning style, with the kind of repertoire they sing, and with what you offer. So if we put out this template and stuff together, it is by no means what we are saying is the way to do it. But what we found time and time again through my teaching at the CCM Institute is a lot of new teachers just want a place to start, a guide, and then once they get comfortable with that, then they bring their own experience into it and they branch out. So we'll offer that up for anybody who wants to say, yeah, I would love a template to follow. And please know, like, we're doing it with the fully in mind that you're going to make it your own and do what works best for you and your clients.
Sure. And my caveat on that is, guys, that's one of the reasons why being a singer myself, voice teacher, having a degree in vocal performance, if you don't know that about me, I went to university. I gave junior recital, senior recital. I sang, I gig. I also have a degree in computer science. So I was able to take those 2 things together to make this platform. And so the idea was, I know I don't know all the exercises. And in fact, I want you to be able to create those exercises. So that's why we made the tool the way we did, so that you could take something from the library, extend it, add it, build it, make it your own, and really kind of embrace that to how you want to craft and really run your practice. So
yeah. Carla, no, you cannot play the accompaniment and have your student on the other side singing it. You cannot do that. I mean, you could record it ahead of time and like send them 3 to play, but that's going to be just, a bag of worms, just a mess. So I don't do that.
Yeah. And Mike, I think your system does allow you to play the accompaniment, but you're not actually playing it in real time. You're pre-recording it so then they can use that on the other side.
Sure. You can pre-record it, or you can do it like kind of, I would call it on the fly, but literally you can play in a phrase at a time and then work the phrase. And, I remember earlier on in my training, very rarely was I allowed to sing the entire song all the way through. Only when it was kind of performance ready. You're really working on one phrase at a time. Different things like that. So we built it so if you want to, you can play in a phrase, work on the phrase, go to the next phrase. You can do that before, and we're even licensing tracks from piano tracks. Talking to app companies, shout out there, Darren. But we'd love to integrate more and build the community out. Cool.
So let's say you get into Michelle mentioned. She has her SOVTs to start with. I do something very similar. I consider that I have my warm up, which is literally welcome to your voice lesson. Let's make that voice move. I don't give any corrections. That's autopilot for me, where I'm just kind of watching to see what they respond, then move into technical work and do that technical work. And then we move on to rep. Everybody's going to have some different system, but this is kind of what we'll talk about in the template. So when we get to that rep section, let's talk about how to deal with that, because we've been throwing in a few of those things. Let's kind of connect those dots and then detail them more. So as Michelle has mentioned, you're going to be best off most of the time by having a secondary set of speakers. So having a Bluetooth speaker that you can play that song off of the app on your phone, whatever app you're using, you put it into the Bluetooth or into a hardwired speaker. You're then going to need to get the balance set between the accompaniment and yourself. And again, this is going to come to the voice teacher to use some hand signals where we can, go turn it up, turn it down, or right there's just right. Come up with your own system. It can be really helpful if you have the sheet music and you have the accompaniment track that you're going to be working off of, for you ahead of time to write down the times for each section. Because like Mike said, we're not always going to just run the whole song. But if you know that Caro Mio Ben starts at 10 seconds, and when we get to the chorus, it starts at 38 seconds, then we can at least, when we want to go work, say, great, let's go to 38 seconds and start there, and everybody knows where you are. All right. So I'll start off and just kind of tell you my system when it comes to rep, and I'd love to hear what others do. What I usually do is first just have the person sing the whole thing for me, and I take notes copiously. And so as I'm taking notes, I like to do it on my iPad, because I can then immediately send the sheet music from my iPad over to my client. Or if I'm working off of sheet music, I then photo it with my phone and then send it as a text message or use my scanning app. But I take all those notes, and then after they've sung the song through, we kind of just recap and then go through and work those spots. So then I think Michelle mentioned this, is that we go through, and if we know that we need to make a technical adjustment on a certain high note, then I'll take the time to reconnect the vocal exercise that I did with that high note. Same typical voice lesson stuff. We do that. The only difference is a lot of times, because of the back and forth, I'll end up addressing all of those technical issues first, and then go back and then have them try to sing the thing through again, and then pause if we need to along the way. If I want to break things into sections, sometimes that's when I'll go ahead and go to acapella singing. Because as we've mentioned here, and several different people have said, that when you're singing acapella, you all of a sudden are watching the student differently. You notice them, as Michelle said, in their space, or you notice where they are maybe off pitch, but you haven't caught it, because when they actually have the support underneath, they are on pitch. Right? So it allows you to look for those things as you work a cappella, then bring them back, sing the song through again. And now they have a video recording of what you did together. And then I tell them to review that, because that's one of the beautiful things with most of these platforms, is there's some way for the student to record the lesson. Now, some of them require you on your end to do the thing. Others do the recording for you, and then the student can just access it on their own. But something that they get to take with them, which is pretty awesome. They can actually literally watch you talking it through and not just listen. And then, if you have time, you move on to other songs. But I'd love to hear from the rest of you. What are your ideas for working with rep?
I do the whole sing through at the beginning with notes. It's kind of like a NATS adjudication, right? Where they're singing through the whole thing, and I'm taking notes, I'm circling parts. Alyssa's asking, how does this work with younger kids? So I'll get to that in a second. I do that. I also go back and forth between the track and then me playing piano. So if there's trouble spots, I don't try to do that with the track. I boop over to the piano and we do that work there. I do suggest putting in little time stamps in the music. That's helpful, but again, doesn't have to be done. With the younger kids, I very much intentionally do sections of songs. So I do interleaving and I do chunking, what's called chunking in learning. And so it's like, okay, we're going to sing the whole song. Let's say Castle on a Cloud, right? So we're going to sing Castle on a Cloud all the way through. And then we say, great, we're just going to sing this part. And then I go back to the beginning and we sing that a couple times. And then this middle part, great, just that. With little kids, get them moving and have a conversation with them at the beat. I know this is a little bit off of the rep topic, but she's asking a specific question. So with the younger kids, set intentions with them at the very beginning of the lesson. What are we going to do today in the lesson? What are you going to do with your bodies today? Okay, check out your space. Are all of your distractions out of the way? Okay, and then take them through kind of a childlike playfulness where you say, I'm closing down my play brain and I'm opening up my music brain, right? Like just little things that you're helping them set. We can do this with adults too, by the way, and maybe we should more often. But setting the intention for the lesson and setting the intention like in the space is really helpful with younger kids, because then you can come back to it. You can be like, did you get your toy brain back? Come on, let's come back to music brain, you know, and teach them how to do that. The other thing I would say about rep, don't do it in more than 5-minute chunks. So with the online kind of way we learn online and the way people are kind of conditioned to interact with online content, anything more than like 5 minutes at a time with something, they're going to space out. So try to keep that little like intently singing for 5 minutes, stopping, taking a breath and going back. And that's just kind of one of those things that's a little bit annoying about attention span, but can be helpful and get you through the longer piece. Most pieces, I mean, unless you're singing like Wagner or something, you're not going to have more than say 20-minute aria, but you know, you're probably going to be okay in that. Repertoire wise, again, we already said the thing about having the accompaniment on the other side. I mean, I think that's how I normally use rep. It's pretty straightforward. Like I feel like there's no real secret sauce.
Yeah.
I also think just like you know your students when you're teaching them face to face in your studio, you know them how they're going to react online. They're going to be the same person, you know, whether it's, you know, totally unfocused, and when they walk in your studio, you have to spend 3 or 4 minutes getting them focused in on what they're doing, or make sure they don't look in the mirror because they're always checking themselves out, or whatever it is. You know, and those kind of things. So don't, you know, it's just a different medium. It's just a different medium. You're teaching the very same person you were teaching in your studio last week. So don't think you have to change everything you're doing. Try as much as you can to keep, we've already said this in several, try to keep things as similar as possible to what you've been doing. And you're making some of these great adjustments that both Matt and Shell have suggested that may be a little bit different from your normal, but you're still doing the same thing, same goals when they walk out the door.
I thought of something that's helpful. So like when you said the thing about the mirror, that made me think of sometimes I do 2 different things depending on what we're working on. So sometimes I tell them to turn off their camera, so I'm just hearing them and they can be free in their voice without being watched, number 1. Or I tell them that they are not allowed to look at their own little picture. They have to turn off their own little picture so they can't see themselves and only I can see them. That's really cool. And other times when we're working on very technical things, I tell them to pin their video. And what that means is that they're big and I'm tiny. So they're usually when you're on a video, when you're video conferencing, the person you're talking to is big because they want it to make it feel like you're having a face-to-face conversation. I will tell them, no, you pin your video so you are big and I'm tiny, and therefore you're really seeing what you're doing from here to here or here to here, backing up from the camera in order to get more space, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of fun to be able to
idea. Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then that's recorded, right? So now if they're, doing something funny with their jaw, their tongue, they're seeing it. It's right there for God and everybody to see.
Well, and I think, though, you just brought something up, too. Another good point is the backing up. And let's touch on this because it's one of the things that, we covered almost like an hour ago is like pick the platform that you want to work on and then look at, your equipment. But the thing we forgot to mention back then was finding that critical distance in the room to get your best sound, right? So on the student's end, if they're a young kid, they might be closer to the laptop or the tablet on their end, and it's going to be fine. For those of you who are in collegiate programs where you're going to be teaching your vocal performance majors, you're going to need to get some distance between them and the laptop. So, you know, having them start to back up a little bit. And again, you might just need to use some hand signals with them to, you know, point and go that way, move, yes. And then, nope, that's the good spot. And find that sweet spot for them, because, you know, every room's, we call it the critical distance, and every room has a different critical distance, which is the space where you get an equal amount of room noise and direct sound. Now, the one thing you may run into, especially if you're working with a big voiced belter, if you're working with an opera singer, is that they may overpower the speakers a little bit. So what that is actually is not the speakers, it's the microphone on their end. Mm-hmm. So you can have them go into the settings on their computer, and they should be able to look this up on their own after the lesson if it's an issue, and come back ready to make the adjustment. And they pull up that setting, and there's always a microphone adjustment where you can turn the microphone input volume down a bit. And then again, you can work together by talking it through and using hand signals to find the sweet spot that their mic needs to be set in order for you to get the kind of sound that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So, you know, an easy adjustment that you can make that'll significantly improve the sound quality. Mm-hmm. The one other thing, though, to remember is that pretty much every system out there has some sort of audio compression. And what audio compression does is it levels out the dynamic levels. So it makes the softer louder and the louder softer. So you end up getting this dynamic range that seems like it's about this much, when in reality it might be about that much. So there's you know, different ways. Like one of the things I like, you know, with Mike's system is it does have an audio meter that bounces, so you can kind of see the visual of what it's doing. If you're going with a different platform, you can always have the student use a decibel meter app. They're available for free over on, you know, on your phone. You can get one on your watch. And so you can have the student sit there and do it. And if you're doing a messa di voce exercise for dynamics and you can't tell because of the audio compression on the other system what it, you know, they're doing, they can hold up the decibel meter facing the camera as they do the exercise, and you can see whether or not they're making the changes you want.
Yeah. I love that. That's a good idea. I'm just going to do that.
The other thing, too, on checking on your mic, there's a pretty simple way that you can get a feel for what they actually sound like. And that's having them make a recording on their cell phone while you're watching it on the video, and then send you that recording. Because I think most of us now have at some point with our students had them record themselves in a lesson, or we've used our phone, hit pause, and then played it back to them. So if you're already are used to listening to your students on iPhones, like I use my iPhone all the time to be like, no, that was good. Stop doubting yourself. So if I hear the voice coming through here, I know what this does to their voice. I know that it makes them slightly tinnier, and I have a good idea of how accurate of a representation it is. So if I'm ever in doubt, sometimes I teach at the university and the bandwidth is really slow, and I'm going, gosh, are they really off today, or is the system just not keeping up? And if I suspect that, I'll say, do me a favor real quick. Pull out your phone, make me a recording as you sing, and send it to me. Then they send it to me, and I listen to it, and I go, yep, the internet's really slow today. You're in good spot. And then we know where to go with it, right? So there's all kinds of these little tweaks and things that you can learn from each other, which is kind of the point of tonight, where we can, you know, all, you know, get these ideas to play with and explore, and we can make it work.
That's great. This is just an iWatch, Christine. And it just like comes with a decibel meter. So I don't know the name. It's like decibel meter or something. It's just built in there, if that's what you're asking.
I think the one I use is Decibel X. It was free at some point. I don't know if it still is or not. But Decibel X is nice. It gives you a good readout. If you look out around onto other apps, you'll see it. What I like about Decibel X is it also gives me a spectrograph.
Oh, nice.
So I can see if I have my singers form it. And then, you know, also see where I'm coming in. Now, look, these are not medically viable devices here. You're not getting clinical measurements, but you're getting relative measurements. So most of these phones will tell you the loudest is 100 decibels. And if you pull out a real meter, you'll find your students at 108. So they can be off. But if it's reading 100 and soft is 98, they're clearly not making a difference. Whereas if we're getting a dynamic range of 90 to 100, we have a difference. So you have to use it relative to its own measurements and not assume that you're actually hitting scientific measurements. And Emery just asked, is there an app for decibel meters on Android? I imagine there is. You just have, I think on those, there's plenty of them.
Yep.
Just look for decibel meter and you should find an option.
And just let me answer another question about Accompanist. And they don't have a Android version, but it's coming out in April probably. So it's close.
Lori,
also, most of us have friends that have iPhones. If you really, I mean, and these students, they're sharing tech all the time. If it's an iPad versus an iPhone that somebody's borrowing or whatever. So it's coming. I'll say that.
That's a great point. Voice Lessons has iPhone, Android, and we are in desktop and laptop. But for lesson, we do recommend use desktop or laptop. So we don't support students on an iPad. It's just there's only so much you can do on a small A5 chip, right? So I think Michelle, sorry I'd step out for a second, but Michelle, what I came back and heard was that, one of the benefits, and I think it was mentioned, but if not, I want to point that out, is by doing the online lesson, you can create these recordings. And a lot of the times, how many teachers are actually setting up a video camera in their studio? I know there's some, right? But it's not 100%. When you teach online, it's a click of a button on all these platforms. And you get that, and the student can then go, well, I do see my ear wiggling or my jaw's moving or whatever the funny little nose is twitching. I'm not sure. Well, there we go. So hold on, sweetie. But my point is you get on the video.
Bring her on.
I know, bring Olive on.
Hey, come on. Come here.
Come on, little baby.
Hey, everybody, we're making a movie. Yeah. All right. She's singing. She's been doing the drills. All right. And there's been some questions about the resources. We set up this link. I'm going to drop it in here. It's No Voice Left Behind. And so we'll add a lot of the stuff we talked about today that you guys have questions on. If you are interested, you can sign up here. You will not be put in the regular marketing drip. Warning, okay? We're not gonna spam you if you sign up here. This is only to get the templates or any of the. We're gonna put all these resources together. So just drop your email in there if you are interested. We're expecting to get that put together for everyone by Monday. So just sit tight, drop your email. We'll drop stuff in there for you. And again, you're not going to be on the Voice Lessons marketing drips. If you want that, go to the main site and you can go through the normal channel. So
yeah. Let's cover two quickly in there. Anne, thank you for that about Decibel X. I better check my credit card bill. She said it's $3.99 a month later. Better double check that. Make sure I didn't click something. Now
we know that Matt needs help with his budgeting.
I know somebody that can help with that.
There we go. So somebody asked about group lessons online. Yes, we're trying to cover that because Zoom is probably the best option for group lessons right now. Zoom is, if you're not familiar with it, it's the platform that a lot of universities use. It's got a screen share function, which is really great for regular classes. So if you have a private studio, and so look, there's lots of ways that we can enhance and, using online platforms. So for instance, if the kids in your studio are all stuck at home and you're trying to figure out how to keep yourself relevant in their lives, you could do an online music theory class as a bonus add-on using Zoom, where you could bring them all in. You could put music theory examples up. You could build community on that Zoom platform. So yes, you can do it there. And in Zoom, I know that Michelle had mentioned that you can pin a video. So on Zoom, you can, as the host, I can say, I want this video front and forward, bring that person up, have them do the thing that they do. And then when they're done, I can unpin them and put myself forward to discuss it with them, or I can put the whole grid up and then we can watch everybody talk and give feedback together. So, you could do an online studio class that way if studio classes are part of your packaging deal. So that's, one of the things we haven't dived into too much is that a lot of teachers have these package deals where they may be struggling and going, oh, what am I going to do about this add-on class that's part of this package? Well, you do it online with Zoom, right? So have an online studio class where we all get together. You tell everybody to pop some popcorn, grab some Mountain Dew or whatever the teens drink these days, and, throw them all together in a room. I'm feeling old here. But have them all, get into a room and sing. If you have an adult studio, everybody can grab a bourbon or a beer, and then, all sit around and sing for each other at night. And it can be fun. Right. So Zoom is a platform that the free account allows you to do 45 minutes. But if you go beyond 45 minutes, you have to sign out and then sign back in. So that's one of the upsells for Zoom to go up to that next level. Zoom will allow you to record what you're doing, and it'll either save it in the platform or you can download it, or it can save it direct to your computer. If you do a lesson that way, then you as the teacher are going to have to be the one who then takes that recording and sends it over to the student. Skype does have a record function as well. I can't remember if the student is able to do that or if it's got to be you for initiating it.
I think the student does it, and it saves for 30 days.
30 days, right?
If you're, have any concerns about your student's going to take a video that you don't want it, if you've got your secret sauce, probably don't use Skype for that, because Zoom definitely gives the instructor control over that recording, and we do as well.
Yeah. Right. And we're going to, and so, with Skype, that's the thing with it. They definitely have a high level of compression, I found, on the sound, where I've found some issues with some students on Skype. I don't know if that was my internet connection because I was doing it at my university. But, like Michelle was saying, it's kind of every platform for each individual person. We can do FaceTime, of course, and that's an easy thing that you can do. But if you FaceTime, you don't really have the recording options as well. And then, this is one of the things where I feel like Mike has done an awesome job is with the voice lessons platform. You do get to make an HD recording, and the HD recording is available on your student's iPhone or their smartphone of any type, their tablet, or online. You can also then into that lesson type in notes. So in the same resource, they can pull up their notes, they can pull up their lesson video. And then if you have vocal exercises you want them to be working on, you can have those exercises pre-recorded in the system. And again, the student can warm up right from their phone. So, what Mike has done is kind of consolidate a lot of the things we've talked about tonight into a singular platform where it's a one-size-fits-all solution. But, we came on tonight knowing that not everybody is going to be doing this beyond the next 2 weeks. So that's why we've been kind of trying to give everybody, these multiple options is, yes, you can get by picking these things up if you're going, hey, I'm just doing this right now on my own.
Hey, friends, I've got to go in about 5 minutes. Is there any other questions that any way I can serve before I see y'all at Nat's Chat on Saturday?
I would love your...
Sorry, man. I'm going to scroll back up here. The microphone white paper, Cara, I will put in the resources guide. So the easiest thing is just drop your email on the novoiceleftbehind.com, novoiceleftbehind.com, and we'll make sure that's in the resource guide that we're going to send out to everyone.
Yeah. So you people listening, go to the URL novoiceleftbehind.com. It's probably going to be a page that asks for your name and your email. You give us the email, and that will be our email list where we specifically send you this resource thing that we're busting butt to get ready for you. We're trying to get it ready by Monday.
And we're trying to do this because we care about, look, we are in this together. I think that's the most important thing, is one of the biggest changes that's happened, and I give a ton of credit to Alan for all that he's done as the executive director of NATS. But I remember in a time when I was in school where Voice Studio, there was competition between voice studios, and it was pretty significant. And I think that everybody on this video tonight, we are all in agreement. That's got to go. We're done, right? There is no longer, we can't be experts in everything anymore. I have 3 classical singing degrees. I don't teach classical singers anymore because I'm too far removed from it, right? And so there is room for everyone, and we are in this together. We are a village, and we are helping thousands and thousands of students and making them have something enjoyable in their life that they can take with them forever. So please, jump in, share what you have. information wise to offer up on this comment sheet on the voicelessons.com webpage. We want to do this so that all these students are taken care of, no matter what platform you use, whatever resources you need. We're here to help and offer this advice. Before Michelle goes away, I know that she's doing a Nats chat. Do you and Alan want to tell us real quick what the Nats chat is? I know you guys kind of put this together quickly for the community as well.
Yeah, Saturday we have Nats chats regularly during the year, but we put together an extra one that really is focusing on some of the elements we talked about tonight. But also we'll talk a lot more. I'll talk in a few minutes more about the academic environment outside of voice lessons. But we're going to spend a good bit of time on that for those who are struggling, trying to figure out how am I going to teach my voice pedagogy class, or how am I going to teach my art song lit or opera lit, etc., or do some other things that I need to do. And you can look on the Nats Facebook page and get a link to it. I've given Mike a link. He might can drop it in too.
Yep.
So that you can.
Any other last questions, or should I bail?
We love you. Thank you for being here tonight. You're awesome.
All right, everyone, you're going to do great. Trust yourself. Trust your nuggets. You can do this. You can teach this. Your students are going to love it. I'll talk to you later.
We got this.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Right. Bye.
Yeah, but like check out the Nats chat definitely on Saturday, because I think that, again, another part of our philosophy is you need multiple sources of input. So while we've covered things tonight, I know there's other approaches. So I think that'll be a great opportunity to dive into even more of this. I know that Tom Burke, who's another highly respected voice teacher, he's a speech language pathologist as well, has a huge online business. He's been doing some free chats about how to teach online. So, look up Tom Burke on YouTube, on Facebook. I'm sure you'll find his resources as well. And, again, by looking at all these, you can kind of cobble together what works for you, and then, structure lessons that fit the needs of your clientele. Alan, you brought up a great point, which is academia, because I was in an emergency. I'm on the EPU committee. Don't know why they call it EPU, but it's the Emergency Preparation Operations something committee. And so, but in this committee today, we had some talks about things like group voice class. What am I supposed to do? Scene study class. What am I supposed to do? And ensembles. What am I supposed to do? So I would love what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think there are a lot of options open. I think you have to be creative. I think there are a number of people who are trying a variety of things out right now, from recording sessions. I mean, just push and record and talking from a lecture standpoint, and finding ways to put up that. One quick little tip is, if you make a video and put it up on YouTube, it automatically transcribes your speech. And so, you don't necessarily have to waste your time writing out everything you're going to say, so that you can put it up on your class and then making some kind of recording of it. You can just talk like you do in your lecture class. And it does help, however, because it helps that students can see the transcription of what you're saying, because sometimes audio cuts in and out. You never know what their speed is and how they're going to be able to hear, and also your intelligibility can vary as well. So that's one little quick tip, I think. Also, I think we talked about the Zoom option for group things. I think that's being pretty regularly used right now as an option for a variety of group things, whether it's studio classes and those kind of things. I think where some of the tricky things are ensemble type things, and that's just going to be really difficult for you to master. And I think you're probably going to end up not having the best experience, and your students are going to have a frustrating experience as well. So I think you have to, if you're off for 2 weeks and you've got a concert in May, the end of the semester, and you're probably coming back, your best bet is to provide some bridge opportunities, whether it's recordings that, you can talk about and say, here's how I want you to practice shaping this part of the piece we're working on. Providing creating some tracks. You can use any number of, products to create tracks. And of course, there are now available tracks for a lot of major choral works where you can, highlight the bass, highlight the tenor. And so you can bridge some of their learning from the time now till they come back with some of those kinds of things. I think, as I said at the beginning, don't try to feel like you have to make everything happen that you were going to have happen in your live class. You have to prioritize. You have to kind of decide what is the most important content for me to get across to the students in this class between now and the next time I'm actually going to see them face to face, if I'm going to see them face to face the rest of this semester. And I know we have so many unknowns right now, but we can only deal with our own individual situation as it's presented to ourselves. I woke up this morning in Georgia. The impact really has not been significant, but I woke up this morning, all the presidents of the institutions in Georgia met. We're, send out an email. We're full bore ahead. We're not making any changes. 4:00 this afternoon, I get an email. Oh, they didn't say this, but we were kidding. We're shut down until March 28th, at which time we will decide whether we're, going to go back to live classes or transition to online. So the situation's changing all the time, and all we can do is take the situation we're in, and if it's a 2-week period, if it's a 3-week period, prioritize the content that we feel like is most important for them to absorb. Mm-hmm. Find the best method to deliver it, whether it's for us to record lectures, and I recommend you not recording an hour-long 50-minute lecture. Just like their attention span in your classroom is, and they start looking at their phones and doing other things in 5 minutes or 3 minutes, they're even short to having that when they're listening to you online. So have many lectures. I teach foreign language diction, so I'm thinking about how I'm going to, break up concepts that I talk about and make them presentable and give them opportunities. Also, find ways to check in. One of the things that I really feel is going to be really important for our community during this time is that we are checking in with one another. And for many of us, our students' lives are totally absorbed in the community in which they exist on our campus. I think we have, I know at my institution, I know a lot of my colleagues' institutions, we pride ourselves in creating a kind of a sub-community within the larger institution, and probably in many ways, some of our arts areas are the best at creating some of that community. And so we have to find ways now to make sure we don't lose that. And some of our students really, frankly, we're their lifeline, and their colleagues and their students are their lifeline to stability in their lives. For some people, coming to college is the first stable environment they've had, where somebody's holding them accountable and really putting their nose to the grindstone, and they've appreciated it, and suddenly some of that is kind of ripped out from under them, and they're having to figure out what to do. So find ways to check in with them. Give them your cell phone number if you don't already, and you're willing to do that. Find other ways to check in. Create a private Facebook page for your studio if you don't already have one, where everybody can feel free to just have conversation that's not open to the wide world. Set up text groups. Another app I'd encourage you to explore is Marco Polo. And if you don't know how to use Marco Polo, it's a great app. Polo, and it's basically a video chat app. But I could say my student could send me a recording of them singing something, at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the next morning I can get up and I can listen to that and I can respond to it. I can give them pointers. I can evaluate that video. Or I can tell them to go off and practice and send me a 15-minute practice session, and do that on Marco Polo, and it just archives it all, and it's really a nice app for you to use if you're not using it. It gives you a lot of interaction and ability to provide good feedback, just kind of real time. You can also just have a conversation. I can do diction that way, for instance, where it's like, go send me a recording of whatever, we're starting diction German. So send me a recording of Ich grole nicht. And then I can have them all do that, and I can respond right back to them. Or I can do, Facebook chat with them and do some coaching in diction. We can do a lot of coaching in opera with or theater with character exploration, dialogue. The things, I really think one of the things that we will find if we will take the time to do it is that because we seem like we are handicapped by the singing aspect in some respects of what we have in the studio environment, we can actually go to the things we really want to spend time talking about in lessons, like the meaning of the text, the character development throughout the story, or the song cycle, or the opera aria, that unfortunately, because that student walked in the door at 10 o'clock and we know we have 50 minutes with them, and they don't know their notes, or they don't know this, or they have a performance in a couple of weeks, that we shortcut sometimes. And so it's a really good opportunity for us to step back and just take a minute and think about some of the things you'd love to do, and integrate them. Yeah. So, we will be talking Saturday a lot about platforms, and that a lot of institutions have. They're using a lot of different platforms, and they're very different. So we're talking about putting some groups, Facebook groups together around people that are teaching on Moodle, and people that are using Blackboard, people that are using Desire to Learn, and all the different platforms, so that people can just help, get in little groups of people who are using the same platform.
That's awesome.
So we'll hopefully be doing that.
Thank you guys so much. This has been such a joy. We've been on air now for 96 minutes. So for those who've been tuning in, this actually was the largest event we've ever thrown. So guys, thanks for helping us set our largest attended event. Really good comments. Amanda Siliker, you just teed me up. So no pitch, but obviously my favorite platform is voicelessons.com. And if you haven't checked this out, you can go sign up for the webinar and watch that. I'll actually drop the demo video. Let me make sure Jonathan's okay with that, because I just show really what a beginning singer, and a lot of you guys are not teaching, beginning singers. Some of you I've got earlier ones, but we'll go through kind of what the platform can do. And if you want to learn more, please sign up for the webinar where you can learn more as a teacher. If you just want to get access to the resources that we're putting together for free, no marketing, novoiceleftbehind.com. As Alexander reminded me, put the www in front of that, click on the link we've dropped in. And thank you guys so much. We've got the Nats link in there, Alan. I did work that in. So if you guys have any questions, reach out. We're happy to help. Matt, thank you. This was great.
Yes, Alan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And of course, yes, and thanks to Michelle and Marci, even though they've had to peace out early.
Marci, thank you. Michelle, thank you. It was really tremendous joy I'm so blessed to have met everyone and to have built this platform and be working with everyone. So
Amanda said she's looking for something free for a bridge. We completely understand. I try them all. I really think I agree with Michelle on this, is you got to find out what your device plays best with. Your device and your your internet speed. I mean, I tend to go towards Skype just because it's what I did first, because Skype was, you Skyped lessons. I did that. Sure. I would say that I found other times that using FaceTime was the better option. It just seemed like it ran smoother on my internet. And there have been times that I've used Zoom, with somebody who requested it. I think that, again, they all have their small little things that make one better than the other. So, jump with whatever one seems simplest. If you're looking for the simplest thing to go, probably FaceTime. It's already on your laptop and it's already on their iPhone. Yeah. Next to that's probably Skype, because if Skype doesn't have any time limits and Zoom does. So, I would say if you're looking for that free bridge, try one of those two, start getting into it. And if you look like, you're going to want to do this on the longer term, then, there's plenty of content and options to look at as you continue to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I literally leave you with this. We had one teacher who signed up a few weeks ago. They were going to lose a student in their studio because they were having so many problems with Skype. And so a testament is they signed up, they put our platform in, we do a white glove support. We actually can remote connect to your computer. So if you're not that technical, we actually get in there and help you work on stuff, and we save the client. They're still studying, they're still happy. So, there's options for you guys. So don't feel alone. We're in this together. And if you want more, the links are all in the chat. So thanks everyone for attending. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Marci.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Shout out to Kayan. See ya.
Night.
Bye.